The morning air over the volcanic colony was thick with ash and heat. Jaren tightened the straps on his boots and adjusted his mask, preparing to inspect the mining fields near the lava fissures. He had worked here for years, walking the edge of danger with steady hands and calm eyes. Yet today something was different. A faint, desperate cry echoed across the rocky cliffs. At first he thought it was the wind twisting through the caves. But the sound came again, sharp and filled with pain. Curiosity and concern pushed him forward. Jaren climbed carefully over jagged rocks, feeling the heat radiate from glowing cracks in the ground. The cry grew louder, more frantic. He reached the edge of a deep crevice and his heart froze. Inside, trapped beneath fallen boulders, was a small dragon. Its scales shimmered orange and red, reflecting the molten light from the lava below. Smoke rose around it, and every movement it made risked injury from the unstable rocks. Jaren's mind raced. Everyone on the colony had warned about dragons. Dangerous, untouchable, sacred. No human was to interfere with them, for their strength and temper could destroy a person in moments. The voice in his head told him to step back, to leave the dragon to its fate. But another voice, stronger and sharper, insisted, help it. He took a deep breath and dropped to the edge of the crevice. The heat was intense, almost unbearable, but he kept moving. With careful hands he began shifting rocks, testing each one before lifting it. The dragon hissed and snapped its small jaws, fear evident in its glowing eyes. Jaren spoke softly, words barely audible over the rumble of the lava and the dragon's panic. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to help. Sweat poured down his face and his arms trembled from effort. One wrong move could crush him or the dragon. The heat burned through his gloves and ash fell like rain, making every foothold slippery. Still he persisted. With one final heave, a large boulder slid aside, freeing the dragon's front leg. The dragon let out a low growl, then recoiled, unsure if it could trust this strange human. Jaren slowly backed away, giving it space. He reached into his pack and pulled out a piece of cloth, tying it into a sling to support the dragon's injured leg. The dragon sniffed at it suspiciously but did not resist. Inch by inch, Jaren guided the dragon toward a safer ledge, avoiding molten patches and unstable rocks. Every movement was precise, every step was life or death. When they reached solid ground, the dragon collapsed, panting and exhausted. Jaren knelt beside it, keeping his hands visible. He offered water from his small container, letting it lap gently. The dragon's scales were hot, and its breathing was ragged, but slowly it began to relax. Its small head pressed slightly against his shoulder, a sign of trust, a first acknowledgement of the bond forming between them. Word of the rescue spread quickly. Miners and colony residents arrived, curious and wary. Many gasped, warning Jaren that he could not interfere with a dragon. Some stared in disbelief as the young creature lifted its head, eyes following Jaren with an intensity that unsettled even the bravest onlookers. But Jaren stood firm, silent and calm, knowing that courage sometimes meant standing alone, even against fear and tradition. By evening the lava cooled slightly, casting an orange glow over the valley. Jaren built a temporary shelter for the dragon using rocks and salvaged metal. He cleaned its wounds carefully, applying herbs and bandages from his kit. The dragon watched intently, still cautious but no longer aggressive. It allowed him to check the injuries, shifting only slightly when Jaren's hands brushed its scales. As night fell, the colony grew quiet. The dragon lay curled near the shelter, breathing steadily, eyes glimmering in the firelight. Jaren sat beside it, exhausted but alert, understanding that this moment had changed everything. One act of courage had created a connection, a fragile bond between human and dragon. The colony's people whispered among themselves, some impressed, some worried, but none could deny what they had seen. Jaren knew that this was only the beginning. The dragon would recover, but the real challenge lay ahead, earning its trust completely, proving that humans could be protectors, not threats. Yet, as he watched the young dragon's chest rise and fall, a sense of purpose filled him. He had chosen courage over fear, action over hesitation, and in doing so, had saved a life that could shape his entire future. He slept lightly that night, sitting near the dragon, ready to respond at a moment's notice. The volcanic winds whispered through the cliffs, and for the first time, Jaren felt the weight and the wonder of responsibility. He had taken a leap of courage, and in return, he had earned a companion unlike any he had ever known, a creature that would trust him with its life. And with that trust came the unspoken promise of a lifetime devoted to protection, partnership, and discovery. Simple and basic English, use simple and basic English. and do not give headings. The sun rose over the volcanic cliffs, casting a warm glow on the young dragon lying beside Jaren. Ashen, as Jaren had named him, was awake, stretching his small wings and testing the strength of his injured leg. Jaren watched carefully, ready to support him if needed. Over the past few days they had learned to communicate without words. A glance, a gesture, a soft touch was enough to share intentions. The bond forming between them was quiet but strong, a connection built from trust and survival. Jaren offered Ashen a piece of dried meat. The dragon sniffed it, then slowly took it from his hand, careful and deliberate. The action was simple, yet it spoke volumes. Ashen was beginning to trust the human, understanding that he meant no harm. Jaren smiled and scratched behind Ashen's ear, careful not to press on the injured areas. Ashen leaned into the touch, a soft rumble vibrating from his throat, the dragon equivalent of contentment. The colony watched cautiously. Many humans were still wary, afraid that Ashen might attack or that Jaren had broken some unspoken rule by rescuing him. Yet day by day they noticed small changes. Ashen stayed close to Jaren, following him as he moved through the cliffs. He learned quickly which paths were safe and which led to danger. Jaren, in turn, learned the subtle signs of Ashen's moods, the twitch of his tail, the flick of his wings, the flare of his nostrils. Together they navigated the hazardous terrain, protecting each other from lava fissures, rockslides, and sudden bursts of volcanic smoke. Jaren introduced Ashen to simple tasks that dragons needed to survive. He taught him to hunt small creatures for food without destroying the colony's limited resources. He guided Ashen to safe water sources and showed him how to avoid the most dangerous lava flows. Each lesson was small but important, and Ashen learned quickly, responding to hand signals and soft-spoken cues. The dragon's intelligence surprised many, even the humans who had doubted Jaren. In turn, Ashen began to teach Jaren things that no human had known. He learned how to sense tremors in the ground before a small eruption, how to read the winds to anticipate ash clouds, and even how to detect other creatures approaching from far away. Jaren was amazed at the dragon's instincts and memory. He realized that courage alone had saved Ashen, but intelligence, cooperation, and patience were building a bond that could last a lifetime. Their connection grew stronger each day. Ashen began to mimic some of Jaren's gestures, nudging him when he wanted attention or help. He would place objects in certain ways to communicate needs, like a stick for digging or a rock to indicate danger. Jaren learned to read these signals, responding with care and guidance. Together they created a rhythm, a partnership that balanced courage, skill, and empathy. One afternoon, as they explored a ridge near the colony, a sudden tremor shook the cliffs. A boulder slid dangerously close to Ashen, and without thinking, Jaren lunged, pushing the dragon out of the path of the falling rock. Ashen tumbled but quickly regained his footing. He looked at Jaren with wide eyes, and for the first time he seemed to understand fully that this human was not just a helper but a protector. Ashen nudged Jaren with his head, a silent thank you, and circled him in a playful, protective gesture. The colony's humans began to take notice. Rumors spread about the bond between the human and the dragon. Some were skeptical, believing dragons could never truly trust a human. Others watched quietly, beginning to see that cooperation and courage could forge connections that seemed impossible. Jaren did not boast or speak of his actions. He simply continued his work, caring for Ashen, guiding him, and learning from him. Evenings were quiet but meaningful. Jaren and Ashen would sit on the edge of the cliff, watching the lava glow below. Sometimes Ashen would nuzzle against Jaren, resting his head on the human's shoulder. Other times he would stretch his wings and flap softly, enjoying the warmth of the sun as it sank behind the horizon. These moments were not just peaceful, they were lessons in trust, patience, and companionship. Over time Ashen grew stronger. His leg healed completely, his scales gleamed brighter, and his wings became more powerful. He learned to fly short distances, always returning to Jaren, demonstrating the strength of their bond. The dragon's intelligence and instincts combined with Jaren's guidance, creating a partnership that was both remarkable and rare. By the end of the week, it was clear that one act of courage had transformed both their lives. Jaren had saved a dragon, yes, but in doing so he had gained a loyal companion, a teacher, and a friend. Ashen, once vulnerable and fearful, had become confident and playful, knowing he could rely on this human for protection and guidance. Together they had formed a bond that could not be broken by fear, danger, or distance. The night fell, stars glittering over the volcanic cliffs. Jaren and Ashen sat side by side, the warmth of the lava below mixing with the calm of the night. The wind whispered through the rocks, carrying the promise of challenges ahead, but also the certainty of partnership. One human and one dragon had found in each other not only survival but trust, loyalty, and understanding. As they rested, Jaren knew that this was only the beginning. The bond they shared would face many trials, dangers, and tests, but he was ready. Courage had sparked it, patience and care had nurtured it, and together human and dragon would face whatever the world could throw at them. A bond forged in fire, unbroken and unshakable, had begun, a partnership that would shape the lives of both for years to come. The colony had grown quieter over the past few weeks, the volcanic cliffs settling into a rhythm of work and survival. Jaren and Ashen moved together through the fields, guiding each other, hunting together, and watching for danger. Life felt steady, almost predictable, and for the first time, Jaren allowed himself to feel a small measure of peace. But peace on the edge of the volcanic world was never guaranteed. One morning, a distant rumble echoed across the valley. At first, Jaren thought it was another minor eruption, but the vibrations were different, regular, mechanical, and heavy. He squinted toward the horizon and saw dark shapes moving across the cliffs. Ships. Not friendly transport ships, but sleek, armored vessels, black with red markings, glinting in the early sun. Jaren's heart sank. These were raiders, known across neighboring systems for capturing dragons to sell or weaponize. He turned to Ashen, whose wings twitched with tension. The dragon's nostrils flared, sensing the danger long before Jaren fully processed it. Ashen let out a low rumble, and Jaren understood instantly, the safety they had worked so hard to create was under threat. The raiders had come, and this time courage alone might not be enough. Jaren sprinted back toward the colony, signaling Ashen to follow. The dragon leapt into the air, wings beating strongly, and Jaren felt the bond they shared strengthen in that moment. Every step was urgent. Every movement mattered. By the time they reached the center of the colony, the raiders had already landed, sleek black figures moving through the settlement, scanning for dragons and humans who might resist. The colony panicked. Families of miners scrambled to hide or flee, and some humans froze in fear. Jaren raised his hands and called for calm, his voice carrying over the chaos. "We face them together," he shouted. "Follow my lead and trust Ashen." The dragon hovered above, wings spread wide, eyes glowing with intelligence and warning. The sight of Ashen above them inspired courage in the humans. They realized that this human and this dragon were united, ready to protect the colony. Jaren quickly assessed the situation. The raiders were organized, armed with high-tech nets, tranquilizers, and weapons designed to subdue dragons. They moved with efficiency, but they had never encountered dragons who trusted humans enough to fight beside them. Jaren signaled to Ashen, and the dragon roared, a sound that shook the cliffs and echoed across the valley. Other dragons, previously hidden, emerged from nearby caves, alerted by Ashen's call. They circled above, wings flaring, ready to defend their territory. The first wave of raiders approached, but Ashen swooped down, claws extended, letting out a blast of fire from his small but fierce mouth. Jaren threw nets and used the environment to his advantage, creating obstacles and hazards for the attackers. Rocks tumbled down cliffs, smoke from the lava fissures spread into the raiders' path, and the colony's humans rallied, inspired by Jaren's courage. One raider aimed a tranquilizer at Ashen, but Jaren moved faster, shouting a warning. The dragon twisted mid-air, narrowly avoiding the dart, then landed on a high ledge, glaring down at the enemy. Jaren realized the raiders had underestimated the bond between human and dragon. They expected fear and chaos, but instead they faced coordination, courage, and instinctive teamwork. As the battle intensified, Jaren and Ashen moved as one. He guided Ashen to flank the raiders while he protected the humans, using quick thinking to trap and disable attackers. Each dragon used its strength, speed, and fire carefully, avoiding harm to the colony, while the humans followed Jaren's commands. It was dangerous, exhausting, but their teamwork was unmatched. Even the raiders, trained and ruthless, began to falter against the unity of humans and dragons working together. Hours passed and the sun climbed high. Finally, the raiders, realizing they could not win, retreated to their ships, leaving behind equipment and a warning. Jaren and Ashen landed in the center of the colony, breathing heavily, sweat and ash covering them. The humans gathered around, cheering and hugging one another, relief washing over everyone. Jaren looked at Ashen, who lowered his head in acknowledgement, scales glinting in the sunlight. They had survived together. In the aftermath, Jaren helped repair damages, tending to humans and dragons alike. The attack had been frightening, but it had also shown the colony something vital. The courage and connection between a human and a dragon could protect more than just one life. Ashen had become more than a companion. He was a guardian, a symbol of what courage and trust could achieve. That night, the colony held a quiet celebration, sharing food and stories. Jaren sat near Ashen, watching the dragon settle comfortably among the others. He realized that the battle had changed something fundamental. Humans and dragons, once separated by fear and misunderstanding, had fought side by side. The bond between them was no longer fragile. It was a foundation capable of withstanding even the greatest threats. Jaren knew challenges would continue to come. Other raiders, natural disasters and dangers from beyond the cliffs were inevitable. But he also knew that as long as courage and trust guided him, and as long as Ashen remained by his side, the colony could survive. One act of courage, the leap into the lava cave to save a young dragon, had now grown into a lifetime of protection, teaching humans and dragons alike that together they could face anything. As night fell, the stars glimmered over the volcanic cliffs. Jaren and Ashen sat in silence, listening to the quiet of the colony. The threat had passed, but the lessons remained. Courage, trust, and partnership could overcome fear, danger, and the unexpected. And in the glow of the lava below, human and dragon shared a bond stronger than fire itself, a bond that would define the future of their world. Years had passed since the attack on the colony, and life had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Jaren and Ashen had become legends, not just for surviving the raiders but for showing the galaxy that humans and dragons could live and work together. The volcanic cliffs, once dangerous and lonely, were now filled with dragon habitats, observation posts, and small human homes built in harmony with the landscape. The bond between human and dragon had inspired others, and the colony had grown into a symbol of courage and cooperation. Jaren walked along the cliffs, Ashen flying above, scanning the territory. Together they watched over the young dragons that had hatched in the colony, teaching them to fly, hunt, and protect themselves. The dragons had become confident, strong, and intelligent, yet they remained loyal to humans who treated them with respect. Jaren had trained the human children as well, teaching them patience, courage, and the ways of the dragons. It was a community unlike any other, where respect and trust guided every action. One day, a group of new settlers arrived from a distant planet. They had heard stories of the colony and its human-dragon partnership. At first, they were cautious, unsure if dragons could be trusted or if humans were capable of protecting them. Jaren met them with calm confidence. He introduced them to Ashen, who landed gracefully and studied the newcomers with bright, intelligent eyes. The settlers watched as Jaren guided Ashen to show how he communicated and worked with humans. By the end of the day they were amazed, not just by Ashen's power but by the patience, courage, and wisdom of the humans. Jaren spent long hours teaching and mentoring. He shared the lessons he had learned during that first rescue, showing humans how to recognize dragons' emotions and signals. Ashen helped, demonstrating his intelligence and loyalty. Young dragons followed the humans carefully, responding to commands and gestures. It was not just training, it was education for both species, a two-way exchange of knowledge and understanding. As the colony prospered, Jaren realized that courage had a ripple effect. One act, jumping into a lava cave to save a dragon, had sparked something larger. Humans and dragons began to cooperate across other nearby settlements. Other colonies sent envoys to learn from Jaren's example, and gradually humans across the system began to earn dragons' trust. Wars over dragons became less frequent, as both species realized they could achieve more together than in conflict. Ashen grew into a massive, majestic dragon, his scales reflecting the fire of the volcanic cliffs. He became a guardian, not only of the colony but of the young dragons and humans learning the ways of coexistence. He would swoop down to guide a lost dragon back to safety, alert humans to natural dangers, and even demonstrate flying techniques to the youngest hatchlings. Jaren watched, filled with quiet pride, knowing that their partnership had created a legacy that would last long after his own time. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jaren sat with Ashen on the highest cliff. They watched the colony below, alive with movement, laughter, and the low hum of dragon wings. Jaren thought about the first time he had rescued Ashen, the danger of that lava cave, and the fear that had once gripped him. That fear had been replaced by purpose, by the understanding that courage was not just an action, but a responsibility. The colony gathered to celebrate the anniversary of the dragon's safe return, marking the day Jaren had first shown courage. Humans and dragons alike shared food, stories, and laughter. The young dragons performed small flights, guided by their human companions, and Ashen soared above, powerful and graceful. The settlers and visiting humans listened as Jaren spoke softly about trust, bravery, and the importance of protecting those weaker than oneself. His words were simple but filled with meaning, and the audience, both human and dragon, understood their weight. Even beyond the colony, Jaren's courage became a symbol. Other systems heard of his partnership with Ashen, and humans began stepping forward to protect dragons in need. Jaren realized that his life had become more than survival or protection. It had become a guide for others. He saw young humans learning to approach dragons with respect, and dragons responding with loyalty and intelligence. A cycle of trust and courage had begun, spreading across worlds. Night fell, and the stars reflected off the volcanic glass that littered the cliffs. Jaren and Ashen sat together, quiet and content. The colony slept safely below, dragons curled in nests and humans resting after a long day. Jaren reached out, running a hand along Ashen's scales, feeling the strength and warmth of the dragon. The life they had built was a testament to the power of one brave choice, one leap into danger that had led to a lifetime of trust, protection, and understanding. As Jaren looked toward the horizon, he knew that challenges would continue to come. Other colonies, new threats, and unforeseen dangers were inevitable. But the bond he had forged with Ashen, and the legacy of courage they had created together, would guide humans and dragons alike. Courage, Jaren realized, was not about glory or recognition. It was about responsibility, trust, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. In the quiet of the night, with Ashen beside him and the colony safe, Jaren smiled. Their story was far from over, but their legacy was already written in the trust of dragons, the courage of humans, and the bond between them that no fire, no storm, and no enemy could ever break. One act of courage had sparked a lifetime of protection, and together human and dragon would continue to shape a future filled with strength, understanding, and hope. Years rolled on, and the colony had grown into a thriving community where humans and dragons lived side by side. Jaren had aged, his hair touched with silver, but his resolve remained as strong as ever. Ashen, now fully grown, was a magnificent dragon, scales shining like molten metal in the sunlight. Their partnership had become legendary, a story told across systems as proof that courage and trust could bridge the greatest divides. The mornings began with the same routine. Jaren checking the colony, teaching humans, and monitoring the dragon's growth, while Ashen flew above, watching the cliffs and the surrounding skies. Every dragon in the colony had a human companion, and every human had learned to respect and understand their dragon. Jaren watched young ones play, chase, and test their wings, guiding them with patience. It was a life built on mutual trust, understanding, and the lessons learned from that first rescue so many years ago. One day, a scout from a distant settlement arrived, breathless and anxious. "Dragons are being captured beyond the northern cliffs," he said. "Humans are being harmed. We need guidance." Jaren stood tall, Ashen's massive head resting beside him. The young dragon stirred, sensing tension. Jaren nodded. "We will go. We protect all dragons, and we will teach others to do the same." His voice was calm but firm, carrying the authority of experience and courage. The journey was long. Ashen led, his wings cutting through the sky with precision and speed. Jaren and a small team of trained humans followed in specially built flying harnesses. Below, the volcanic ridges stretched endlessly, and Jaren's heart beat steadily, guided by the rhythm of responsibility. Every human and dragon on this mission trusted him because they had seen what courage could achieve when paired with wisdom. When they reached the northern cliffs, the scene was grim. Cages lined with high-tech locks held dragons, some injured, some frightened, their cries echoing against the rocks. Raiders were patrolling, armed and confident. But Jaren and Ashen had learned long ago that true courage was not reckless. It was precise, patient, and strategic. Ashen swooped down, letting out a roar that rattled the metal cages. The raiders turned, startled, giving Jaren and his team the opening they needed. Jaren moved quickly, unlocking cages, freeing dragons with careful hands. Ashen helped, using strength to move obstacles and fire to deter raiders without harming the dragons. Humans and dragons worked together seamlessly, each trusting the other completely. It was the same bond that had begun years ago in a lava cave, now multiplied and strengthened across dozens of dragons and humans. As the last cage opened, the freed dragons hesitated, uncertain of the humans. Jaren stepped forward, arms open, calm and inviting. Ashen landed beside him, letting the dragons see that humans could be protectors, not threats. Slowly, one by one, the dragons approached, nudging Jaren and Ashen, their eyes filled with cautious trust. In that moment, Jaren understood something deeply. Courage had not only saved one life, it had sparked a movement, a philosophy, a lifetime of guardianship. The return journey was filled with quiet pride. Humans and dragons traveled side by side, many dragons carrying the rescued ones gently on their backs. Jaren looked at Ashen, now massive and powerful, yet still loyal and gentle with all the dragons and humans around him. Their partnership had grown beyond friendship. It was a model of what could be achieved when respect, courage and trust were combined. Back at the colony, celebrations awaited. The rescued dragons were cared for, their injuries tended to, and new bonds began to form with human companions. The colony had become a beacon, a place where others came to learn how to coexist with dragons and protect them. Jaren watched from the cliffs as humans and dragons worked together, teaching, guiding and protecting. His heart swelled with satisfaction, knowing that one act of courage had blossomed into a legacy that would last long after he was gone. Evenings were quiet, moments of reflection shared with Ashen. The dragon would rest his massive head on Jaren's shoulder, and together they would watch the sun set behind the cliffs. They spoke in their own silent language, gestures and eye contact conveying understanding and trust. Jaren thought about the first moment he had saved Ashen, the fear, the danger, and the leap of courage that had begun it all. That single act had created a lifetime of guardianship, teaching humans and dragons alike that protection, respect, and trust could change the world. As the stars emerged over the volcanic cliffs, Jaren walked among the dragons and humans, smiling at their progress, their courage, and the unity that had grown stronger with each passing year. Ashen soared above, a guardian of the skies, as vigilant and loyal as ever. Jaren understood now that guardianship was not a single act. It was a lifelong commitment, one that required patience, courage, and constant care. The colony slept safely beneath the cliffs, humans and dragons resting together in harmony. Jaren and Ashen remained watchful, knowing the world could still be dangerous, but confident in the bonds they had forged. Together they had proven that courage could create change, that trust could overcome fear, and that one human and one dragon could shape the future of an entire colony. And so their legacy endured. Across the cliffs, valleys and skies, the story of Jaren and Ashen was remembered, told in whispers and songs, inspiring humans and dragons alike. One act of courage had become a lifetime of guardianship. One human and one dragon had proven that together, they could protect, guide and transform a world that once seemed too harsh and dangerous to survive. As dawn broke the next day, Jaren and Ashen stood side by side on the cliffs, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. The colony below thrived, young dragons learning, humans teaching, and all guided by the example of courage, trust, and unwavering guardianship. Jaren smiled, knowing that the bond he had forged with Ashen was eternal. A lifetime of protection, partnership, and legacy had begun, and the world would never forget it.